Okay, well, I'm going to try my best at trying to put together a quick video. Most importantly, please, Stingray has put together a very good document on how to install Vegetation Studio Pro to be able to use with the OPCD toolset within Unity. It's very important that you follow these instructions to the letter. Installing Windows 10 SDK on your computer will be a one-time event. After that, every time that you are going to start a new course, new project in Unity, steps 2 and following will definitely be something that's necessary. So download the Windows 10 SDK, get it installed, and then you won't have that to worry about going forward. So I'm not going to go through installing that. All right, the next thing you'll want to do is to make sure that you set up the software correctly by going into Edit, Project Settings, and Player. From here, you'll want to, let me get this out of the way. You want to make sure that there are 4 settings that are set correctly. You want to make sure that the .NET equivalent is set. You also want to make sure that this mono, net4x, and then of course allow unsafe code to be checked. Once that's done, you'll be able to close that up with no problem. Next, we are going to install some packages in the package manager. The instructions are very clear, but again, click on all to show you all the packages that are in fact installed. You're going to need to have a certain list. We will install Burst, for example. Do not install Preview 50. It must be Preview 45. Again, all versions, Preview 45, and install. All right, click all again. Next, you'll be Collections, right? Collections, which will be 9 Preview 10, which is the current version. 9 Preview 10, install. After that, it'll be Jobs. Jobs will be 7 Preview 5, as it is. And then, of course, we will need to install Mathematics. 12 Preview 20, Mathematics, all versions, 12 Preview 20. Again, make sure it's 12 Preview 20 that's selected, install. Once you're done, your list should look like this. You should have Burst, Preview 45, Collections, Preview 10, Jobs, Preview 5, Mathematics, Preview 20, Post-Processing 2.3. With those prerequisites in place, you are now ready to bring in the Vegetation Studio Pro. Now that you've gone to the asset store and you're ready to import your Vegetation Studio Pro, I do not want the demo in mind. It's just a lot of unnecessary stuff. But otherwise, everything is going to get installed. It's selected minus the demo. And go ahead and get that package installed. And I will be back when it's done. Once it's installed, we're going to optimize the editor a little bit. We want to make sure that we only have checked use burst jobs and enable burst compilation. So I'll uncheck that and I will uncheck that, leaving us with those two checked. Now we're going to want to make sure that the console, that the editor will clear this. We'll hit play and then make sure no new errors show up in the console at this point. So it looks like we should be good to go. Next, I'm going to install the prefabs that were so generously created for us by Stingray. Appreciate that. So assets, import package, custom package. I'm going to go to my downloads, this mask prefabs. This makes it a lot easier and quicker to create the mask. Install them all. You notice it's going to go in a Biomes mask folder so we can find it in our assets once we get there. So here's our Biomes masks. Here's the masks in which he created those. I haven't used the other two, but I have used this one right now. So our focus will be on the Biomes mask prefab. To keep everything neat and tidy, I'm a little bit of a neat freak, a little OCD. So I'm going to create an empty object here. This is going to be for my mesh and my VS meshes and Biomes and Splines, sorry. There we go. And also in my assets, I'm going to create a new folder, which is going to be my VS Biomes and profiles. That's where I keep everything in. So that way I know everything that's being used by Vegetation Studio is going to all be in one nice, neat, and tidy place. So that concludes the installation of Vegetation Studios. And now to actually get this within my project. So in the window, under Awesome Technologies, we are going to add Vegetation Studio Pro to our scene and then begin configuring different styles of planting vegetation. Once you click that, you'll see a new item here in the hierarchy, which is your, let's go to Inspector, which is Vegetation Pro Setup. So once we have this added to our scene, we'll want to check a few things and set up a few preliminary items. First is going to be the camera. Add camera here should in fact say none, which is how we want it to be set up. Once you get past the cameras, you'll want to click on terrains and make sure that your terrains were added into Vegetation Studio. If it hasn't been, you can simply add all of the terrains by clicking this button here. Next, you're going to want to set up your vegetation, the basics. The vegetation will take care of your plant distancing. There's some suggestions in the document on some settings, which I'm following as we deal with this. And that would be your basic setup and your numbers for your vegetation, which can also be changed as you go along and learn and tweak your configuration. Okay, now that we're here, we're going to go to where we store our where I store the biomes and profiles, and we're going to add a biome. A biome is going to be an area or a package of vegetation that's going to be used with this particular recipe, so to speak. So Awesome Technologies, Vegetation Pro package, and select whatever amount you want, because I'm going to be not doing this with a texture, and I'm going to do it with a mask. I do not need textures to be applied here. Just to keep in mind though that these can always be changed. So if you start out with no texture, you can modify it and change it to 4, 8, 16, or 12 as you go. But because I'm going to be doing it on a mask that I'm getting from Inkscape, I'm going to say no texture biome. And I'm going to name this. This is going to be my mask for excluding OPCD meshes. Right? That is going to define that for me. Okay? Then we are going to go to our Vegetation Pro Studios. We are going to select Biomes. And then we're going to add our mask, our vegetation package. So now you can see that we've added a section here, right? Make sure we select the default biome, and I'm going to name my biome exclude OPCD meshes. Just a friendly name for me to remember and to reference things. So the area that I'm talking about is all the area that does not have an OPCD mesh, right? So this stuff here, right? This area here, all this brown area here, there is no mesh. That's just the terrain, okay? And I don't want anything planted on the meshes, but I do want, because this is kind of a link style course, I do want tall grass planted in between here where the terrain is showing through. So what we do is we're going to now add vegetation to our biome. So we're going to edit biome. And here's a pull down menu. So as you add biomes, this will get bigger and bigger and bigger. This is the vegetation package, or the vegetables that are going to be the veggies, the objects. As you can see, there can be large objects, there can be trees, plants, objects, 2D grass, 2D plants. This would be for your 2D grass is your stuff that you get already in the OPCD package. These are your two-dimensional things that you normally paint with your paintbrush on the terrain. You can also use those in Vegetation Studio to plant for you as well as 3D grass, plants, trees, objects, rocks, bushes, sticks, whatever it may be that you want it to plant, especially if there is a prefab that you have for it. I have some prefabs created for me. Oops, I didn't install that yet, so let me go get that. Okay, I've installed some grasses I bought. I've had, and I own a grass pack, which has a bunch of stuff in it. I also have the Nature Valley, the Nature Manufacturers grasses as well. The Advanced Foliage Pack. Here you can find some Unity grasses that are prefabs. These are tree trunks, if you so want them. I added those into the gauntlet, into the forest floor. But there's also the grass models. There's some of these prefabs. There are clovers and different leaf coverings, floor coverings, and whatnot. So these are what would be considered your 2D grasses. So for anyway, 3D grasses, sorry. And then of course, that's your Unity, and then you've got your advanced grasses, your prefabs here as well. So lots of different types of grasses here. And like anything else, you can change the colors of them as you see fit, as with any of your grasses. Okay, so let's add some stuff to our biome. I've got the package, the Exclude OPC Mesh. That's the package name that I'm going to be using. I'm using this particular vegetation package. Now it's just a matter of, believe it or not, dragging and dropping items into Vegetation Studio. So let's go to my grasses pack. I want some dry grass. Let's find some. Oh, also, a quick little thing, there's a little lock button up here, so if you click that lock, this won't go away as you click on these different things. You'll be able to maintain this. So let's go ahead and drag, let's drag this over into here. You'll see it pop up there. Let's drag this into here. Let's drag some more shit in there. And let's drag some more. And let's drag some more. Other cool stuff. What was that? 14. That's 13. So let's grab 14. Drag it in there. And you notice we got stuff all over the place. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to make sure that it only plants where we want it to plant. Let's go with the 3D grass as well under nature. Nature manufacturer, prefabs. Okay, and let's add another grass 3D. As you can see, we now have vegetation everywhere, including inside. I'm going to delete that, I don't like that last one. Even inside and underneath the water, because it is planting it everywhere to include the mesh underneath the water. So that's probably not what you want your golf course to look like. We have grass literally everywhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to mask off the meshes, the OPCD meshes that are created, so that way this area will no longer have grass in our Vegetation Studio. And in order to do that, we're going to fire up Inkscape. Okay, this should look familiar to you guys. This is your typical Inkscape of which creates your OPCD meshes. Oops, that one's not supposed to be there. There we go. So that's that's your typical Inkscape. So what I've done is I've created an idea in my head that all of these areas here, are going to be that grass already planted. That's what that's going to be. That area there. So delete that, so I don't need it. And then all of these areas here are going to be another material completely. And then of course this green area here is going to be another third set of materials with another set of masks. So all we need to do is, for this particular drill, is that I want the areas that I have marked off to be different grasses. I want those to not be planted with this brown grass. So I Inkscaped some things and I color coded them for my own purposes. Purple is going to be my darker green areas for that wheat field type look of green area. Looks like farmland, so I wanted that to be represented there. I also have this pink area here where it's going to be this greener area, lighter green area. So that's what that's going to be all about. All right. So I'm going to first save this out now, because this is going to leave all the terrain that I want planted onto my grasses. So what I'll do, all the grasses that I just put in that biome. So now I'm going to export this PNG. Here's where some things are really, really important. Make sure you're on the page button here. And make sure your numbers are what your numbers are supposed to be for your terrain, which is going to be in the README file inside of your terrain backup. The terrain backup README 1807 is my size here. So we want to make sure that 1807 is there. And of course, 4096, 4096. Export that as however you would like to have that taken care of. Demo class, assets. I put it in my Biomes folder. Exclude OPCD meshes. Mask. Alright. Now I want to also make sure in advance that this says RGBA 16, and then Z default compression, zeros on the DPI, and the anti-aliasing is left as it is the Cairo anti-aliasing good. And then of course click on export. Alright, once that's exported, we're good to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create my purple only export. So I'm going to hide. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually delete. Oops, I've got to redo this. Dang it, I got to delete the satellite. Now I can export it. I made a mistake. Sorry. So export PNG. 18, 18, 18, 18, 16, all my default, export, I'm going to overwrite that. I forgot to do that. That has to be white, has to be blank. Replace. Yes. All right. Now I'm going to delete hole 1, and I'm going to delete pink, leaving me only with purple. Right? File, export PNG. I want to export this as, this is going to be green farm fields. Green farm fields inside of my biomes. And purple, so I know it's my color code. And export. Alright, one last thing, I'm going to edit, undo, delete. My pink is back, and I'm going to delete my purple. Now I will do file, export PNG, settings are all the same, 18, 18, boom, boom, boom. Export this as light green fields, pink. Again, that's just my naming convention. It's how I organize things in my head. It's that way I can track things along in Unity. And that should be it. That's all we need for Inkscape. Okay, so as you can see, we have vegetation everywhere, and that is definitely not what we want. And if you look, we even have vegetation in the water because underneath the water is the base mesh. So we even have vegetation in the water, which is definitely not what we want. Looks pretty cool, but definitely not what we want. All right, so how do we fix that? We use these meshes. And as you can see, I have 3 of them that we saved from before. In order to use them, we need to configure the settings for each one of these. So we make sure that we have the color text checked, which it is. input texture alpha, which it is. We check the alpha is transparency, and then we also make sure that generate MIPS is checked. And we also make sure that it's 2048 Mitchell, and then set the compression to none. Once that is done, you hit apply, and you'll see down here that it will go checkered for the area that has no paint. I'm going to do that for the other two textures that I have as well. Other two, not textures, the other two masks that I have, right? And that way I can be ready for all three of them when I finish. So you can see the areas that have no coloring, the checkered, white and checkered, that's going to receive this particular blend when I implement it. Okay, now let's apply the mask. So we go to Vegetation Studio once again, go into the Edit Biomes. We want to select one of our grasses. I'm going to collapse a lot of this stuff to make navigation much easier. All right. I just don't want to see all this stuff. Okay. Now that I've made this a little bit easier to navigate, okay, I'm going to add a mask. Oops, I'm in the wrong spot. So we go to texture masks, sorry. Texture masks, I'm going to add a texture mask group. And I'm going to be using my exclude OPCD mesh. I'm going to be using RGB channel, add that particular mask. Okay. I'm going to then see that I'm going to drag my exclude OPCD mesh into the texture, and I'm going to call that exclude OPCD meshes as my rule. Okay. Notice that I have 1807, 1807. From here, nothing should happen. All my plants and veggies are still there. We need to go to edit our biomes. Down in our biomes editing, we're going to select one of our textures, which we have, and we're going to add a texture mask rule. We're going to do a texture mask include rule. We're going to select the OPCD meshes. I'm going to add the new rule. As you can see, here it is. I'm going to change this to an A channel inverse, and now some of our stuff will start to disappear. Now do the same exact thing for every one of your pieces of vegetation, and you'll start to see that things will begin to disappear from everywhere and only appear where we want it to go. And I will run through each one of these. Wish I could change the defaults, but all right. So now we have nothing on our meshes. It is only on the mask. No matter where we fly to. Not even there. So now we want to put stuff here where the purple is. So let's fly down there. And let's put stuff down here. All right. So the way I do that is by adding another rule. So go into my texture mask. I'm going to add an additional mask. This is going to be my purple mask here. And my purple mask is going to be my green field purple. Again, 1080, 1080. And I want to go to edit my biomes. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another piece of grass that I want over there. So I want some nice, I don't know, spring, grass, diffuse, whatever shit, right? I'm going to add that grass. And of course, it's going to be everywhere, right? What did I just add? That one, let's add 6. All right, that's good enough. So let's go ahead now to make sure I included only where it's masked. I'm going to actually do an include rule. All right, I'm going to add a new rule. Ooh, wrong. I'm going to remove that rule. I'm going to select purple and then add the rule. And then go to A and inverse. And then do the same thing with that little guy. Exclude, purple, add A, and inverse. Alright, so now I've got green grass on the green field and brown grass on the terrain. That is how you take care of it. And again, you do the same thing for my third area that I want, which is my pink, which is going to be a different set of grass altogether in another area. But you just repeat that once again. Alright, so down here by this water, as you can see, I've got my green stuff over here. I've got my brown over here. Now let's put something around water that is completely different by using a spline. Alright, I'll do my best to stumble through this. Alright, so I want to create an area for my water. So I'm going to create another package. Where is it? Awesome. Create. Awesome Tech. Vegetation package. Around water. Alright, go back up to my Vegetation Pro, go into Biomes. I'm going to add a biome around water. Alright, around water is going to be on the default, and we're going to call that around water. Now I've got my biome. So, let's go into let me think. What's next? Alright, so now that I want to edit my biome, I pull this down and I add my vegetation that I want to have around the water. See, the pull down menu will decide, see, now all the vegetation I had in the other biome is here. Now I want this particular one. And so let's add some things. Let's try and find some rocks. Maybe. There we go. So let's add some rocks. Let's add some objects. Right, let's add some more objects. Let's go and add some flowers. Let's see. Grasses packed. Grasses and flowers. Let's add some flowers 2D. These are 2D textures. Right? Okay. Now we're going to need to be able to now in order to delineate this, we don't want this as default and this is default, so I'm going to assign this to biome 1. Okay, biome 1 is going to be around the water, and as for excluding is going to be there. So still got our stuff. So what I'm going to do is in this prefab that was so wonderfully provided for us, are these masks. So the biomass prefab, I'm going to drag and drop out into my scene. Now to do this is now just a matter of creating the shape that I want around the lake. That's all this is just creating the shape around the lake. Now note is that the red line is where the vegetation is going to plant. The white line, that space between the white and the red line is, I don't know what that squiggly stuff is. That is going to decide where the plant vegetation merges, where it diffuses to, where it kind of feathers out to. Alright, so once I get my basic shape here of what I want, you can click, control click, and give you another point. Control click, give you another point. So this is just like what we were doing in Inkscape. Control click, draw that shape. And so where it blends, that's the word I'm looking for. Between the red and the white is the blend. Okay, and I know that little squiggly thing is aggravating. It's aggravating for me too. I don't know how to get rid of it. It's a Unity thing. That's all I know. Control click. Control click. Control click. And control click. So anywhere inside the red is going to plant. Between the red and the white is where it's going to blend. And that is how we're going to get our textures and our veggies too. Alright, and we'll kind of go with that. Alright, so we'll just use that shape for now. Click, control click, and control click. Now I don't like the size of that particular space between the red and the white. So that's changed down here, right? The blend distance. So I'm going to change that to a 2. And it'll make that blend between the red and the white much, much smaller. Alright, and I might even just go 1 on this to make a smaller blend. Nah, a 1.5. 2. Alright, I'll stick with 2. Just for this demo. Now here you're going to select the biome. This is the recipe that we have with biome 1 equals all the material that we have. Okay? Now, we don't want it on all that stuff. So, I forgot a step. Alright, I've regrouped and I've got this taken care of. So, one of the things that, let me delete this real quick. One of the things that you have to do also is in order to get this to plant on anything, you'll notice that just because I have the Biomes prefab there, we have no material, right? So we don't have a terrain that we can plant on, or a mesh that we can plant on. So we want to prep and add this particular terrain, this particular mesh that we have drawn around, this water, to be added. So in order to do that, we go to Windows, Awesome Tech, Mesh Terrain Setup tool. And we have this particular rough that we wanted on, so we drag the rough up into there, create the mesh terrain and add it to Vegetation Studio. You'll see that we now have an object here. This I'm going to put into my meshes and splines. This right here just had this added. If you go back to Vegetation Studio, you'll now see this mesh terrain here. Okay. Then it's a matter of assigning the correct biome. We have it around the water for biome 1. Now we come in and we have our material. We want to add more plants and flowers to that. You'll notice that I also put that in here too. And so we have that blend area between the white and the red, and this is going to be planted here. So let's add some more stuff there, and we can see it real time by going to the edit the biome around the water, and we can add more grasses if we so desire. We can add some ferns. We can add some clovers. Add some more clover flowery. Add some nettle, whatever the hell that is. Edit that shit. Add some more nettle. Put that stuff in there. Say for instance we want some more flowery stuff. Add some flowery stuff. Add some flowery stuff. But you get the idea of what can be done. Alright, so now, because I don't want to see this, I'm going to raise the water plane up a little bit. There we go. Now I don't have enough stuff here, so I can simply go to my prefab and bring this out a little bit, and it will plant it accordingly. Right? Bring it out a little bit more. A little bit more. Alright, that's starting to look good. Right? Bring that out a little bit. And get it right where you want it. Right? Bring it right up into that cart path if you so desire. Right. Now what's interesting is that it should not plant. If I bring it all the way back here, it won't go onto the cart path because that cart path mesh is not part of the that mesh has not been assigned to Vegetation Studios. If I did want it on the cart path, I could simply prep that particular path, right, and bring that over, and I can actually have it overflow if I want it to look like I'm going through there. So whatever you want to get for your look, you can do that. Now say for instance I did want it on the cart path. Well, I would just simply go to add that mesh, and that mesh would then get, there's the cart path, concrete, add it, create it, and add it to Vegetation Studio. Now the cart path gets vegetation. Now that'll be exactly what you want. So simply come up here and get rid of that path. Delete it. There you have it. Vegetation around the spline. Vegetation using mask. Vegetation planting the opposite of the mask where the mask isn't, and in the mask planting where the mask is. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing at the end. I made a little mistake. Thanks.